Hi everyone, this is Gabrielle Bastien for Regeneration International, and we are live from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization's headquarters here in Rome. So we're at the Global Symposium for Soil Organic Carbon, which is the first event of this kind organized by the United Nations, and presumably not the last. So it's a very large scientific meeting between 500 delegates from around the world to review the role of soils and soil organic carbon as part of the climate system. So we are here today with three wonderful participants of this conference. So Andre Loy, who is the president and founder of IFOAM Organics International, and is also on the steering committee of Regeneration International. Andre also runs an organic farm in Australia, an organic tropical food farm. We are here also with Paul Liu, who is an agronomist who's done extensive field research and international relations related to agriculture. Mr. Liu is the executive secretary of the 4p1000 initiative, which is an initiative from the French Ministry of Agriculture to encourage carbon sequestration in soils worldwide. And here with us today is also Jean-Luc Chotte, who is a soil scientist at the UNCCD SPI, so the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification Science and Policy Interface. Mr. Chotte is also at the IRD, so the Institute of Research for Development in France, and is in charge of bridging the IRD with the 4p1000 initiative. So gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So we will start with a general question about the 4p1000 initiative. So Mr. Liu, could you please introduce this initiative and its goals and objectives?
Well, as you said before, the initiative was initiated by the Ministry of Agriculture in France during the COP21 in Paris at the end of 2015. And in fact, the main objective is to try to make the soil more rich in carbon, to stock the carbon in the soil, to increase first the food security, secondly to mitigate for the climate change, and also to adapt agriculture to climate change. So it's a triple objective. This is quite ambitious, and this 4p1000 figure is coming from the fact that roughly, sorry for the scientist, but roughly that will be the percentage we need to increase the quantity of carbon in the soil from agriculture or forest in the world every year to try to balance all the fluxes coming from the human activities and the fact to have CO2 in the atmosphere. So this is a symbolic figure. Of course, it will be difficult to have this objective reached every year, but at least we can try, and this is a kind of a goal to have also. So this initiative is international now. It's not because it was launched by France that is a French initiative. This is an international initiative, and it will be articulated in two main parts, a scientific and research part, and a more in the field project part. So then we will have this articulation, because this is very important that the initiative, it could be a kind of transmission belt between all the kind of partners and actors and stakeholders around this subject of stocking carbon in the soil.
Thanks very much for this explanation, and I'd like to go back to the implementation part of it afterwards. But next I would like to ask Mr. Chotte, what research exactly has been done as part of the 4p1000 initiative? Have there been any surveys on global carbon stocks?
Yes, thanks a lot for this question. But first of all, what I would like to say is that research and all over the world has been working on soil carbon stock for many years. What is new that it's to try to put soils in the agenda for solution for climate mitigation, adaptation and food security. So it is why it's a very great moment to have all researchers moving in the same direction. So and after that, if we want to be able to say that any sustainable land management will improve carbon stock, we need to know where we are at the current state. That means how many carbon are in the soil, and to do that is not so easy. And it is why we need an international initiative such as the 4p1000 to bridge all expertise together in the same direction. Because if we want to know how much carbon in the soil, it's quite different if you go to the field, farmer plot, to have an appropriate methodology, or if you want to analyze satellite, images to have a broader view of carbon stock. And this is a very, I would say, a challenging issue for scientific. It is why, again, we need all the community working together. And there are ongoing survey in different countries. There is one dealing with, European, in France, for example, RMQS, statement. It's a very, very in-depth quantification of carbon stock, but also in other countries, in Australia, for example, done by CSIRO and other universities, but also in some part of Africa. We must take into account that all partners in Africa, but also in Asia, for example, in Thailand, there is a map going on carbon soil doctors led by the Land Development Department of Thailand. So again, many current ongoing studies, and what we need is to merge all this expertise in one single project for the sake of food security and mitigation and adaptation.
Absolutely. And Mr. Loy, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, because you have been looking into soil carbon sequestration for quite a while, if I understand. You've been interested in the topic. So from the perspective of a farmer and of someone who's been interested in this topic for a while, what do you think of the 4p1000 initiative?
I have been interested in this particular topic for more than 20 years, getting information out about the potential of soil organic matter, soil organic carbon, for mitigating climate change, but also for adaptation, because we know it brings multiple benefits such as increasing water capture and infiltration. It brings more water to the crop, increases the amount of nutrient we have for the crop. There are a lot of benefits. In terms of climate change, we do have enough science at the moment to show that with certain practices we can take more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere than farming emits and store that in the ground as soil organic matter. For me, this initiative, the 4p1000, is probably one of the most important initiatives that has come out of the Paris climate change meeting. Because what a lot of people don't understand, if we went to zero emissions tomorrow and we stopped polluting the atmosphere with excess carbon dioxide, it will take several hundred years before the climate stabilises again, before the carbon dioxide that we have in the atmosphere goes out of the atmosphere and back into soils and plants where it belongs. We cannot wait that long. The fact is now we're at 400 parts per million, and when we look at ice cores and places like Antarctica, they drill into ice cores and they look at the trapped gases and they can measure the amount of carbon dioxide at particular times in history. We have 800,000 years of records of carbon dioxide, and never once in that 800,000 years have we been at 400 parts per million. So we actually need to start taking these greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere. One, we need to go to renewables. Secondly, we need to actively sequester it, take it out. And we know agriculture can do it. The most efficient way to take carbon out of the atmosphere is to use photosynthesis, where plants will use carbon dioxide and water and the energy from sunlight, and they produce oxygen that we breathe and glucose as the main molecule of energy that all living entities need. But in that process, they deposit a lot of that carbon in the soil through their roots when leaves die, leaf litter. And we know that with the right types of agriculture, we can recycle this carbon from plants and animals, put it into the soil and increase the amount of carbon in the soil. We now have good peer-reviewed scientific studies showing that it is very possible for us to reach the 4 for 1,000 target.
And actually, this was my next question. I was wondering, and that will be a question for all of you, if you will, what are the current estimates with regards to the potential for global soil organic carbon sequestration across the different land uses, and what are the uncertainties related to that?
Yes, first of all, what I would like to add to the comment of my colleague, that the good point of the 4p1000 initiative, that by sequestering carbon in the soil through photosynthesis, it's one of many other options for negative net emission. But this option has a very good point because it improves soil quality and adaptation. That's and other will not. That's clear. And it's not only to respond to your question. It's of course a matter of land management, of agricultural practices, farmer practices, compost, rotation, agroforestry, that means trees plus annual crops. But it is also a matter of soil types. Farmers will not be able to store or to improve carbon stock at the same level in a sandy soil or in a clay soil, that means. And it is why we need to gather all the expertise to be able to say to farmers, look, your carbon stock is there, and if you want to improve, maybe we can share your knowledge, farmers' knowledge, scientific knowledge, all stakeholder knowledge, to try to design, solution locally adapted, embedded in political, action, plan for action. And it is why, again, it's a multi-stakeholders initiative, and we need to share knowledge from science, from farmers, from policymakers. And it's very important, and it's also, locally targeted. It's 4p1000, it's a broad definition, but at the end of the day, we should be able to say to farmers in Kenya, in France, in Senegal, look, if we discuss, maybe we will find the solution to adapt and to mitigate climate change.
The thing is that it's very important what Jean-Luc said. This is a multi-stakeholder initiative. Most of the time the policy are coming from the policymaker, and they decide for the people. They take some advice on the right, on the left, on the science sometimes, and they put on the paper some policy. Now we would like to have a kind of network where the things are coming from the ground to the top, and the top from the ground, and so on, and left and south, north, doesn't matter. There will be not one truth, because all the soil are different everywhere on earth, and the farmers have different experience, and we will have different incentive also to try to push the farmer in one direction. But at the end, if the food security increase, if the agriculture is adapted to the climate change, then everybody will be winner in that story, and that is the most important thing. So the multi-stakeholder initiative is really the definition of our initiative.
Definitely, yes.
If you talk about carbon stock, it will be understood by people who are working on biodiversity, people who are from the United Nations, on biodiversity. It will be understood by people who are working on, combating desertification and land degradation, because as far as you improve carbon stock, you will, improve soil property. And of course, it will be understood by people who are working on climate impact and attenuation and mitigation. It's multi-stakeholder, and also at the crossroad of the three major international United Convention. It is why, again, it's a very good move forward to design solutions.
Absolutely, it's such a crucial point in time for organic carbon sequestration, definitely. So, from my understanding, once a country becomes signatory of 4p1000, they are responsible for implementing practices or policy that will favor practices to sequester soil carbon. So this bears the question of measurement, because soil organic carbon measurement does have challenges. So I'm curious what these challenges are, and how can we reduce the uncertainty of measuring soil organic carbon?
You want me? Okay. There are a lot of methodologies for measuring carbon, and most of them are fairly close to each other. The real trick is, how do we measure all the different farms, all the different landscapes, and in the end it's going to have to get down to good modelling. The same way we estimate and measure carbon in forests, that's based on good modelling. That's what we're going to have to do with carbon in the soil, because it's not practical to go and test every part of a field for variations. There's some very good models here I've seen, and the work that's being done with, for instance, satellites and near-infrared techniques, we're getting close enough that those models will be accurate enough for us to use to understand what's happening and understand if our levels are going up or down. That, I think, we'll see coming out of this process, but there's a lot of other scientific processes at the moment looking at this, so I believe that it won't be that long before there'll be an agreed model for it. The other one I want to say, which is really important, agree with my colleagues here, is that what is really important with what we're doing here is that we are building resilience into farming systems. The fact is, we are in climate change now. Look at Africa. With the drought there, it's estimated 60 million people are in danger of being completely food insecure. All around the world, we can see disruptions of climate. And I want people to understand the reason why that is happening, because if you warm the Earth by 1.5 degrees, that is the equivalent of putting thousands and thousands of atomic bombs worth of energy into the atmosphere. That energy now fuels our weather systems. So the events we get are more intense. So for instance, if it's a snowstorm, it'll be stronger. If it's a hurricane or cyclone, it'll be stronger. If they're droughts, they're stronger. They happen more often. If they're floods, it's the same. And we're seeing this around the world. We need to develop systems that are resilient and can adapt. And we know that by increasing soil organic carbon, that does increase the resilience, particularly to droughts, because you can capture and store water for longer, but also for floods, because when you've got a lot of soil organic matter, the water quickly infiltrates and you get what's called field capacity. In other words, water to the roots much quicker. The soil also is less vulnerable to erosion, and the erosion of soils is one of the ways that we lose a very big percentage of our soil organic matter. So this is real win-win. If we do it properly, we can make farming adapt to the changes we're in, and we can start the process of reversing climate change as well by taking that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and putting it into the soil.
Yes, to deal with uncertainties, it's a key issue. But at first, I would like to say that if we want to deal with that, we must to know at what scale any plan of action has been designed. It's not the same dealing with uncertainty if the action plan is designed, I would say, as a plot farm or at the national level. It is why we need to combine, uncertainty from on-field measurement, soil sampling, but also on satellite analysis and so on. And by merging all this uncertainty from the plot of the farmer to the nation or to the landscape, we will get a better answer on uncertainty and a right picture of carbon stock according to the action plan.
Definitely. Well, thanks for enlightening us on this, because it is an important issue, but this makes me very hopeful, because I think we are definitely, we've done the first step of the way for moving forward, and the 4p1000 initiative is definitely a crucial project. So for our final words, perhaps you could give us a word about what are your hopes about this global symposium on soil organic carbon, and what is the significance of this event for the 4p1000 initiative?
Well, this is as was said before, this is the first time we have this kind of symposium, and according to the audience and the introduction by a very important person, so we all consider that this is a very promising and important initiative to be maybe renewed. And what could be a good point is that we could take the possibility to have this event every 3 years or every 4 years in order to pave the path to the future and be sure to be all aware of the last improvement and the last progress of the science on that point of view, and also the answer by the farmers and some other stakeholders. And of course, we will not be directly associated to that event at the 4p1000 because we are quite young, but we hope that we will be accompanying the next symposium, and we are ready to do so.
Wonderful. Any other final words?
No, what I would like to say, it's about what I have seen so far during this very interesting meeting. It's up-to-date, scientific, challenges on methodology, on modeling, and by sharing, the expertise from different countries, from different research teams, here at the FAO and in this meeting organized by FAO, ITPS, and UNCCD, it's a sort of, we get a lot of energy from that, and we are ready to move forward and to just strengthen, this I would say this first start. So it's a great event.
I'd like to finish up on saying that when I first started farming and studying agronomy, I was told that there was no need to have carbon in the soil because the plants get all their carbon that they need from the atmosphere. And in the 70s, we were taught the only thing we needed the soil for was to stop the plants from falling over. We could actually feed them hydroponically. It's taken a while, but now the importance of soil organic matter, soil organic carbon is being recognised across the board, and this conference I think is very important because it's the first time ever that we've had an international conference focused on soil organic carbon and climate change. And for me this bodes very good for the world. It gives us a very positive future that in this room we have some of the world's best scientists and brains sitting down on how we can work together to stop climate change and ensure that we have food security in a changing climate.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. So we were with Andre Loy, President and Founder of IFOAM International, Paul Liu, the Executive Secretary of the 4p1000 Initiative, and Jean-Luc Chotte from the IRD, so the Institute for Research for Development in France. And I am Gabrielle Bastian for Regeneration International, live from the Global Symposium on Soil Organic Carbon here in Rome. Thank you.